Hey everyone, Ryan here with Ray's Latest, and today we're going to talk about Zach Eflin signing with the Orioles on a 1 year, $10 million contract. And the reason why I would say this is pretty significant for the Rays is he was kind of one of those three guys when it was Hauser, Eflin, and Littell, as kind of had kind of been tracked back and forth to possibility that the Rays could kind of resurge with these guys and kind of rejoin forces with them. And I mean, like I said in previous episodes, is I thought Eflin was for sure definitely the least likely of the three, just based on some of the off the field stuff that we kind of saw come out of him once he left the Rays 2 seasons ago, and where he was, if you guys don't remember that, it was more of when he pitched his first game in Baltimore, and he pretty much immediately said that the Trop sucks and that the fan base sucks. And then that Baltimore, he's like, you pitch in Tampa and there's 8,000 people there. And he pretty much he just dogged the Rays fan base pretty much. And a lot of people didn't like that. And then he kind of turned out to be a below average pitcher for them. I would say, compared to what he was in 2023 and 2022. So I think that 1 year, 10 million was kind of that range that we were kind of expecting the Rays to possibly be able to get him for as well, if he were to sign with us. And so I think his contract offer definitely tracks. And I think that him kind of just rejoining forces with the O's is not bad for him. But I do think it's kind of where I want to transition over to main topic today is kind of the AL East in general, just kind of leaving the Rays in the dust for 2026. And I'll just kind of name off some guys. So for the Orioles, they've had one of the best off seasons we've seen out of a team. They've got Pete Alonso on a 5-year deal. They got Ryan Helsley on a 2-year deal. Shane Baz, who we traded them. They got Taylor Ward in a trade, re-signed Zach Eflin, traded for Andrew Kittredge, signed Leota Taveras, and re-signed Albert Suarez. And they only lost Grayson Rodriguez, and that was with the trade that they got Taylor Ward from. So it's when you see things like that, and it's every team, and to be fair, every other team in our division has a lot more money than us to be able to go pay players. And it's kind of always been that way, but we've just been able to kind of keep up through just the way that we run our organization and the way that we kind of platoon players to get it. The Rays honestly are a pretty good example of Moneyball to a certain extent, as to where we always find a way to somehow win 80 plus games a year, even if we have the worst roster in the division. And the Orioles have kind of they pretty much just drafted their entire team that they have now, for the most part. That they've done great through the draft with Holiday and Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, I'm blanking on his name. Anyways, Colton Cowser. They've kind of they've been really good with their draft, and that's kind of how they've built up their team. But their pitching has been pretty horrible. And then they went out and got Corbin Burns. He was very bad for them, and then ended up getting hurt. And so it was like they just can't find pitching, and they just have never been able to have a good starting rotation. And I think that's kind of what's always hindered them. But they finally got it to click a little bit, and they were one of the best teams in baseball a couple years ago. And then they regressed heavily this past season because Rutschman wasn't playing well. Jackson Holiday was playing okay. Gunnar Henderson was playing okay. And so it was like you saw a lot of regression with some of their players. But from like a financial aspect perspective, they didn't have to spend much on that roster other than Corbin Burns, because they just drafted everybody, and everybody was on their kind of pretty much rookie contracts. And so them going out and re-signing Eflin for $10 million, going to get Pete Alonso to play first base, they're starting to spend a little bit more money, and they're kind of separating themselves as well. And then from a Blue Jays perspective, they just went to the World Series. They just signed Dylan Cease to a 7-year deal. They signed Taylor Rogers to a 3-year deal. They signed Cody Ponce to a 3-year deal. They traded for Chase Lee. they're free agent wise. I mean, I think Bo Bichette, I think he resigns, or I'm not 100% sure if he has any club options or team options or anything like that. But I think he's going to be a Blue Jay next season. Chris Bassett, Ty France, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Max Scherzer. That's one of those where it's like you would love to have that veteran guy, but are you really going to pay him for another 1 year deal? I think the roster is still fantastic enough for them to kind of go all in, I would say. And I think Dylan Cease is kind of them showing that. But it's just things like that where it's, and from, let's see, let's go from a Red Sox perspective. You go trade, get Wilson Contreras. You go trade, you get Sonny Gray. You go get Johan Oviedo. And then you lose, I mean, you lose a couple guys, but you get Steven Matz, give Steven Matz to us. And then you have free agents in Bregman, Giolito, Hendricks, Nate Lau, Justin Wilson, Josh Winkowski. Like, I could see some of those guys re-signing with the team. And you obviously, the Red Sox have the money to pay them. And it's like Yankees, for example. They re-signed Trent Grisham. They re-signed Yarbrough. They re-signed Rosario. They re-signed Paul Blackburn. And obviously, you do lose Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, Mark Leiter, and Ian Hamilton, kind of just in your bullpen. But from a realistic perspective, in free agents, they have Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, Loizaga. I think Goldschmidt and Bellinger are going to re-sign, in my opinion. I think they are. I think Loizaga. I don't know if they can afford to lose another bullpen arm or a back-end starter, kind of however they use Loizaga. He's kind of been all over the place. They just have the money to kind of go out and spend and re-sign these players, and then they're not really losing too much in return. But then you look at the Rays, and you sign Steven Matz to a 2-year deal, you sign Cedric Mullins, you trade for Jacob Melton, you get Jake Fraley. But then you lose Brandon Lau, Shane Baz, Pete Fairbanks, Jake Mangum, Mason Montgomery, Adrian Hauser, Christopher Mel, Cameron Meisner. Like, you're losing more than you're getting, and you have one free agent who hasn't re-signed yet, and then the rest of your pretty much the rest of your roster is in arbitration right now, minus like 2 or 3 guys. And so it's like, what? I understand we don't have financial means to go out and just sign everybody like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets and teams like that do. I get that. But I feel like you have to kind of figure out a way around just falling so far behind. And the only way that this makes sense from a losing so much perspective is, and I know it's not necessarily been classified as a rebuild, which I really don't think it is, because I don't think you can kind of enter a rebuild mode with all of the star power you have on the team now, because you will lose Shane McClanahan in 2 or 3 years, or even 1 year maybe, because you're not going to be able to pay him. If he can stay healthy and has another great year where he's in Cy Young conversation, you're not going to be able to afford him. And it's one of those things where you have Rasmussen, McClanahan, Matz, Pepio. You've got the guys that can kind of form a formidable rotation. But once those guys clear arbitration, you have no chance to really re-sign any of them. You just don't, because they're going to be making too much money. And with Caminero and Aranda, it's all the same way. And I just think that if you want to keep these guys and want them to want to re-sign possibly for a little less money, you have to be competitive. And it's just in this division, it's arguably, I think it's the best division in baseball. You could throw the NL West in there, maybe the NL East if the Braves and the Mets don't want to be incompetent half the year, which kind of always happens, I feel like. But from just a perspective of star power, the AL East and the NL West are the best. And it's usually always the NL West and the AL East that are in the World Series. And you see that every year. So it's one of those things where you can't fall too far behind, because you're not going to be able to catch up. And I truly do mean that. And it's you see Alonso signed as a 5-year deal. He's going to be in Baltimore for 5 more years. If you fall too far behind the curve and they just keep building around Pete Alonso and building around Adley Rutschman and building around Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holiday, you're not going to be able to compete at that level. And I think it is with from a Yankees perspective as well. You have Aaron Judge is going to be a Yankee for the rest of his life. He's going to be there forever. And then you have Max Fried, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt. Like the list just goes on. Yes, you can't outspin those guys. You never will be able to. But you have to do something to figure out how to kind of just be able to compete similarly in a roster perspective. And I know it's really hard, and I understand that the financial difference between the two clubs and pretty much all three clubs in us, or four clubs rather in us, is a lot. I get that. And we have been competitive with less over the last 5-10 years. But I haven't seen an offseason like this in a while where I'm just like, I don't know I don't know what our second base is going to look like. I don't know what our catcher's going to look like. Our closer is kind of up in the air. There's a committee of like 4 guys right now. And we don't have a fifth starter. There's so much more stuff that needs to happen that I just don't know if we're going to be able to keep up with the rest of the division, especially this year. This season, I don't think we're going to be able to catch up with the rest of the division. There's just so much star power elsewhere and just such more solid lineups and back in bullpen guys where it's just those guys can come in and shut it down. And there's obviously the Rays are pitching wizards and they can figure out a way to get one of our guys on our roster as a shutdown guy. I just haven't really seen it yet. I've seen the stuff from Griffin Jacks to be able to do it. I just haven't seen him put 2 and 2 together and be consistent at doing it. So we'll kind of see kind of where that goes and what kind of our roster looks like. But you guys, please let me know what you guys think, especially about where you see the Rays shaping up in the AL East in 2026. And you guys have a great one.